everybody, and either welcome or welcome back to my podcast. As always, if you do like this, please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, and YouTube. Okay, so I guess the best way to explain this one is this is the part 2 to the episode of What the Hell is Wrong with White Women that I didn't expect to be making, but here we are. And remember in that episode where I kind of jokingly said that us white ladies should enjoy our time as being number one as long as we can because it will be fleeting? Well, I'm not going to say that we've been demoted to number 2, but maybe now we're like 1 and 1A with black men. Yes, apparently now we've gone through the gamut of bashing the white women for voting Republican, specifically in the Georgia gubernatorial race. I guess now it's the black men's turn. And I would just like to say at the beginning of this, I am very, very excited and happy for the day when, like, national news stops covering my state. Like, please stop paying attention to my gubernatorial race. Like, it's a fucking dumpster fire. Please stop reminding me. I'm trying to forget the fact that I wasn't going to like anybody who was going to be my governor, and I'm not happy that Kemp's my governor. I wouldn't be happy that if Abrams was my governor. But anyway, we've got one more piece from the Washington Post, and this is an opinion piece titled, "What's up with all those black men who voted for the Republican in the Georgia governor's race?" Yeah, what's the deal with these black men voting for a Republican? I'm sorry, I can't resist a good Seinfeld joke when the opportunity presents itself. But yeah, like I said, this is an opinion piece in the Washington Post, and it is by Vanessa Williams, not the Vanessa Williams, but another woman who happens to be named Vanessa Williams. And this is just, you know, sometimes you read something and like the biases of the person who wrote it really come forward in ways that I don't think the writer entirely intended to. But when you take it and you read it like in black and white, it's pretty blatantly obvious. I don't know. It's a weird thing that I'm starting to notice lately in a couple of other pieces that I've read and will probably discuss here on future episodes. But let's go ahead and get into this one because, like I said, it's, I guess, not that white women are spared in this piece, but I guess it's now the black man's turn to be just chastised for voting wrong, I guess. I don't know. You guys know my views on voting wrong. But let's go ahead and get into this. White female voters in Georgia showed little interest in helping black women fulfill their dream of electing Stacey Abrams as governor, which would have made her the first African-American woman to head a state in the nation's history. Golly, white women of Georgia, we could have helped fulfill somebody else's dream. I guess that's our job, is to help fulfill other people's dreams. Why didn't you do that, white women? I can't with some of these people, man. It's like, wow. Oh, my God. Anyway, 75% of white women voted for Republican Brian Kemp, who was declared the winner late last week, more than 10 days after disputes over absentee and provisional ballots. Among black women, 97% supported Abrams, who was the first black woman to win a major party's nomination for governor. Which, I mean, you would think right there, like, the fact that there was now a black woman who was a major party's gubernatorial candidate, I mean, that's a win. Like, that's a big deal. Like, that's something to celebrate there. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more as we get into the piece, but I mean, yes, granted, it's a loss in that she didn't win, but there is a hell of a huge silver lining in this cloud that I think a lot of people who want to bitch about the results of this election keep overlooking. So, anyway, moving on. Although white suburban women were praised for helping flip the U.S. House from Republican to Democratic control, liberal political pundits and activists criticized them for backing Kemp over the female Democratic candidate. Now, as I mentioned in the episode I did about bitching about white women and their voting, most rational, logical people would look at the midterms from a Democrat perspective and say, that is a win. Like, I think at this point they are at 40 seat pickups, and if memory serves, I think they're at 40. I don't know if everybody's still not everybody's decided, but I think they're like right at 40. I think they picked up 7 governorships and a whole slew of various state elected offices. Like, this was a pretty damn good year for Democrats. Like, there's a lot for them to be happy about. But I guess apparently because certain people didn't win, they want to bitch about the fact that certain people didn't win instead of actually seeing like the forest for the trees and being happy that you picked up as much as you did. And in reference to this, that yes, white women did vote Democrat and did actually help you pick up those 40 seats and those governorships and those state offices. But I don't get it. It's like it's never enough for some people. Like there's always got to be something to bitch about. It's just so weird to me. Like, I would be elated if I was a Democrat that we picked up this much stuff. But I guess, like I said, since Abrams didn't win and Beto didn't win and certain other media darlings didn't win, that somehow this is just such a horrible fucking catastrophe. Anyway, moving on. Because now we're moving past bashing the white women. Now we're going to get to bashing the black men. But another group of voters also raised eyebrows for how they voted in the race, in which Abrams fell about 17,000 votes short of forcing a runoff with Kemp. Black men voted for Kemp at a higher rate than black women, according to exit polling, a data point that drew gasps and rebuke on social media and news commentary. Okay, back to the point that I was making a little earlier. This is Georgia. At best, maybe the Democratic candidate had a 40% chance of actually winning the governor's mansion. At best, Stacey Abrams came within 17,000 votes of flipping a Deep South state. A black woman came within 17,000 votes of flipping a Deep South red state. That's a win. Like, even though she's not going to be governor, that is a huge deal. And that is something that Democrats should be cheering, because honestly, I didn't think she'd even get anywhere near that close. That's insane. Like, this is not something to be sad about. This is something to be very happy about if you're a Democrat and you care about flipping states in the South. But no, apparently they can't look at it that way. And I don't get it. Like, I don't get you people. And now we come to bashing people for not voting the right way. And especially this part about commenting on social media and in the news. First of all, it's nobody's fucking business how you vote. Whoever you vote for is who you vote for. You shouldn't have to justify it to anybody. And the fact that there are apparently people who think that this is open for commentary, I can't, that's wild. Like, why are you trying to come at somebody's neck because they didn't vote the way you wanted them to? Like, they voted wrong. And so now you got something to say about it on social media? It's like, get the fuck out. Like, it's none of your business. It's none of your concern. And it damn sure ain't up for your commentary. But lest you think there was some massive wave of black men voting Republican, let's go back to the piece where they actually cite the numbers of these black men who voted for Kemp. According to network exit polling provided by CNN, 11% of black men voted for Kemp. The Associated Press's VoteCast reported 8%. So, somewhere between 8 to 11% of black men voted for Kemp. Now, I'm not super good at math, but 100 minus 8 equals 92, which that would mean 92% of the black men who voted for Abrams. If you went with the 11%, that would put you at 89% of the black men who voted for Abrams. I'm sorry, where the fuck is the problem here? So, somewhere between 8 to 11% of black men voted for the Republican, and based on that, we get this ridiculous opinion think piece about how black men voted for the Republican. Like, this is, wow. Like, you would think for all of all of the hubbub, you would think we'd be like 20-30%. No, we're either at single digits or barely double digits. Again, I don't get these people. Like, why can you not accept that what you almost pulled off is pretty fucking monumental and just be happy about that? Why do you always have to find something to bitch about? I don't. Ugh. Anyway, let's keep going. Those numbers are reminiscent of the double-digit levels of support that Donald Trump got among black men in the 2016 presidential election. Trump endorsed Kemp, which helped him win a runoff primary contest in July, and he traveled to Georgia to stump for Kemp 2 days before the November 6th election. Kemp's campaign mirrored Trump's political themes and rhetoric. During the primary, Kemp promised to protect the Second Amendment by running a campaign ad in which he brandished a shotgun at a teenage boy who wanted to date his daughter. Another ad showed him sitting in a pickup truck that he said he'd used personally to round up criminal illegals. He described Abrams, who campaigned on expanding Medicaid, increasing spending on education, and protecting the rights of women, immigrants, and people of color, as radical and extreme. Okay, I'll give it to her for this. Kemp's a douchebag. Like, I cannot begin to explain to you, like, this almost undersells how bad those ads were. They were just, like, cringeworthy. It's so bad. Like, you can go look them up on YouTube, but it's just like, especially the truck one, he's also going on about he's gonna blow up things and chop down things, and it's like, it's so stupid. Like, it was so bad. They really were just like horrible. Anyway, now we start getting to the parts where I'll ask a question after I'm done reading the rest of this piece, and I'll see how you guys feel about it. But back to the piece. How can so many black men still align with a party that, now more than ever, is unified by white identity politics? Renae Graham asked in a Boston Globe column after the election. This Republican Party is not the party of Lincoln. This is unabashedly the party of white supremacy, migrant family separations, racist fear-mongering, and Brett Kavanaugh. Ooh, boy. So, again, like I said, sometimes people write things and it kind of is a little more revealing than I think they really mean for it to be. Basically, Renae here is insinuating that these black men voted wrong. Like, how could you? How could you possibly vote for Republicans when you could have voted for Democrats? Like, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you, black men? But to kind of go a little deeper on her commentary here about the Republican Party. Now, I'm no fan of the Republican Party. Obviously, I'm not a member of it. I don't really like where it's at right now. I've not liked where it's at for a very long time, which is why I am no longer a member of the Republican Party. That's why I'm a libertarian. But this idea that, first of all, they're the party of white supremacy. I have said this before, and I'll say it again. I'm not a fan of calling people white supremacists without actual concrete proof of them being white supremacists. It's just, it's one of those things, like, that term needs to still have some kind of meaning. So lobbing it at people without direct concrete evidence of them being a white supremacist, I think shouldn't be done. As far as migrant family separations, let us not forget who started that particular policy. And it wasn't Trump. It was the guy before Trump who did it. And people apparently didn't know that he was doing it because the press didn't cover it. And that's not to say that Trump is right in continuing the policy. But let's not pretend like he invented the policy. That was Obama. And Obama separated families too. I guess just nobody wanted to talk about it back then because whatever, it was Obama and we can't say anything bad about Obama. Racist fear-mongering. Okay, I will give them that because I think a lot of this immigration nonsense is that. Like, it's speaking to a certain group of people who have what we politely kind of refer to on the internet as economic anxiety. And we kind of do it jokingly because it's not economic anxiety that they're anxietal about. But, and then to bring up Brett Kavanaugh. You mean the Supreme Court justice who nobody was able to actually articulate that he did something wrong that could be proven? That guy? You mean the guy that got smeared with like pretty much everything you can possibly fucking throw at somebody? That guy? I don't think you guys want to bring him up anymore. In fact, it's kind of wild how we don't bring him up anymore. But that's kind of another story for another day. Moving on in the piece. Ted Johnson, a senior fellow at Brennan Center for Justice, said black male voters' behavior in the Georgia gubernatorial race reflected a return to how they voted before 2008, when Barack Obama made his successful bid to become the first black president of the United States. Before that election, around 82% of black men voted for Democrats, about 10 points lower than black women. Now that Obama is out, basically black men have gone back to where they were before in terms of supporting Democrats, Johnson said. The fact that Abrams got in the high 80s or low 90s means she outperformed Democratic candidates pre-Obama among black men. Again, first of all, yes, even amongst black men, Abrams did really good numbers. Like, I don't even get the point of this piece. But second of all, and this is kind of a bigger point that I am interested to see how this pans out, just because people, or a specific group of people, vote Democrat in an election or in two elections does not necessarily mean that you flipped that group of people to voting Democrat for the rest of their life. Like, obviously, with Obama, I'm sure there are a lot of black people who voted for Obama because he was black. Like, okay, I don't agree with identity-based voting, but it is what it is. It happened. There's no point in really bitching about it at this point. But I do think there is a lesson in that Democrats should be learning going forward, especially with the gains that they've made in the midterms elections. Don't interpret that as something more than what it is, because there were a lot of protest votes against Republicans and against Trump, even amongst Republicans who voted Democrat as a protest vote. So I would caution against looking at these numbers and thinking that any of these particular voting blocks or any of these particular states or districts or anything like that have actually, honest to God, truly flipped. It might be situational. It might not. Time may prove me wrong, but I don't think based on this particular midterm, you can really make an assertion that certain states or certain districts have turned blue. Like, they could easily go back to being red. They could be purple. I don't think there's really anything that can be extrapolated going forward from these particular results. And just like, obviously, you had this group of black men who voted for Obama twice, they didn't necessarily flip Democrat. Like, they did it for reasons other than, oh, I'm a Democrat now. They voted for him for, whatever reasons. Maybe they genuinely liked his message. Maybe it was just his race. I don't know. Like I said, there's really no point in trying to unpack it at this point because it already happened. So, moving on. Sexism was probably not a major factor in black men supporting Abrams at a lower rate, Johnson said. He cited a paper published earlier this year that looked at how gender stereotypes affected black and white voters' behavior in the 2016 presidential election. Johnson says the paper found sexism plays more of a role in white voting behavior than black voting behavior. That research, along with other literature, shows a higher level of sexist attitudes among men across racial groups. Black female voters showed the least susceptibility to sexist attitudes, voting for female candidates, particularly black female candidates, at a rate higher than any other group. Johnson said it is noteworthy that sexism appears to have the greatest effect on the electoral choices of white women, who are the least likely to support female candidates. Now, let me preface what I'm about to say by saying when I use the word tribal in this way, I'm not using this as some kind of racist dog whistle. Don't try to come at me on this. But I do think that, especially among black voters, and also kind of going back to that point I was making about black men voting for Obama, I think there is more of a pressure put on black voters to vote sort of tribally, like out of a sense of duty to your race, that like you needed to vote for the black man, that for black women, like you needed to vote for the black female candidate, regardless of any other feelings you might have about that particular person. And like I said, I think there is a hell of a lot more pressure on black people and on other people of color to vote for people of color, because there is kind of this sense presented that it is your moral duty to help lift up these candidates, regardless of whether you actually agree with their policies or not, just in and of themselves. Just the fact that we need more women, we need more people of color representing us in government. So when one comes up, you have to vote for them. And I don't think that white people, and especially white women, necessarily feel that same kind of pressure. Like, this is something I was kind of worried about back when Hillary ran the first time, and I was just like, oh God, it's going to be presented like it's my moral duty to go vote for Hillary because she's a woman and I'm a woman, and we need to put a woman in the White House. And I do think there was still a little bit of that in the 2016 election, but I think it was a lot more socially acceptable for white women to say that they did not vote for Hillary and to cite reasons like policy positions, stuff like that, for not voting for Hillary, than it is for people of color to say that they did not vote for the person of color based on policy positions or just anything like that. Like, I do think there is a divide there, and I don't like it. Like, I don't like people feeling like they need to be pressured to vote for a person based on anything other than this is the person you want to fucking vote for. Like, I think that should be your only criteria is, do you like this candidate? Do you like their positions? Do you like their vision? Do you like what they're saying? Do you like what they're laying out as far as their plan for if they get elected, like, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z? I think that should be the only criteria. But I understand that there are people that don't feel that way. And I understand that for certain groups, there is a massive amount of pressure put on them to ignore that and vote perhaps in a way that they don't, I'm not going to say that they don't want to, but that race and gender is made a more outsized issue than actual like policy positions, or whether somebody is part of your political team or anything like that, or part of your party, or represents anything that you actually believe. So I'm going to leave off on that before we start getting into real trouble on that. Back to the piece. And this is actually, we're getting to the part where this kind of cracks me up, because again, this is where I think the author is showing her bias as far as just things. Like, here, I'll read it to you, and I'm sure you can see it too. Black men who voted for Kemp were not so much rejecting Abrams as embracing the conservative message of rugged individualism and free market economics. Oh no! We can't possibly have black men doing that! What? Black men embracing free market economics and individualism? Holy shit, what's gonna be next? This is just such a weird statement. Like, okay, so some black men voted on issues that pertain to them outside of race. And okay, cool, I'm down with rugged individualism and free market economics. I think those are great things. I think those are things that could be very, very beneficial to the black community. But moving back onto the piece, I think it boils down to the conservative mantra of self-determination and economic empowerment resonates with men, period, but especially with a certain cohort of black men, Johnson said. Like the brothers that are hustling CDs to the brothers that open up barbershops, that entrepreneurial spirit is alive in the black community. I want to take a second and kind of talk about something that is very Georgia specific, I think, in this particular quote. Black entrepreneurship is a huge deal in Georgia, in the South in general, and especially in Atlanta. That is like, to be a Black person in Atlanta and say that you are starting your own business, that you're trying to be an artist, you're opening up a barbershop, like he said, you're opening up any kind of business. That's fucking huge down here. Like, that's really, to a certain group of Black people, that's really like the dream. Like, that's where it's at, is to open your own business. So yes, this does speak to that. And I do think that Black people, Black entrepreneurial minded people, are going to learn the lessons that pretty much every entrepreneurial minded person learns about when you start trying to open up a business or trying to work for yourself or do anything like that. How much the government really gets in your way and fucks with you when you're trying to do that. So yeah, I do think that there is something to that. And the idea that this resonates with men, I mean, it resonates with women too. I mean, there's a lot of Black ladies moving down here to Atlanta and opening up their own businesses. And I think it's awesome. I think that really is the way forward for the Black community, is for more Black people to step up and to start opening businesses, start servicing their communities, start really helping each other out, giving each other a hand up. I think that is really the way forward for that community, and just getting away from expecting the state to do for you and to expect the community to do for you and for you to give back to the community. So that, I think, is a really, like, not necessarily Georgia specific, but I think that is, in this context, a very Georgia specific thing that I don't think a lot of people outside of Georgia or outside of Atlanta would really see or know anything about. But yeah, he does make a point that there is a somewhat sizable amount of Black population in Georgia that does feel that way. Moving back to the piece. He said those voters believe the GOP talking point of getting government out of the way and letting people determine their own economic path. That sounds good to Black men, and it's a mantra they can support rather than having the government say, we're going to help you be a man. Again, this is, like I was just saying, obviously when you become an entrepreneur, you start really realizing how much the government fucks with you. But there is also this other strain of thought, and I don't know if this is the same way everywhere. I can definitely attest to it being a thing in Atlanta, that it's starting to become a thing amongst this particular group of Black people, but I think Black people in general, that being on government assistance is somehow looked down upon. Like you're not, especially for men, like you're not fulfilling your job as a man if you are just sitting around the house and getting a welfare check, and you're just, I mean, we don't have like government housing anymore. We still have Section 8, but we don't have we don't have projects anymore. They closed them all down. But yeah, that idea that as a man, you're supposed to be out in the world doing something, making money, just like bringing yourself up, is very much a strand of thought that is starting to really take hold in the Black community, at least in Atlanta. Moving back to the piece. But Black voter support for Republicans rarely rises above the low teens because of the GOP's increasingly racially charged politics, especially in recent years, with Trump's divisive rhetoric and policies going largely unchallenged by party leaders. Trump's election has been applauded by people who espouse racist beliefs, and he has often declined to criticize their actions, such as last year in Charlottesville, where a neo-Nazi drove his car into a crowd of counter-protesters, killing a woman. Johnson said that there are a lot of Black people who may be social conservatives or fiscal conservatives, but are liberal on the issues of civil rights and race. Where are these Black people? I would like to talk to them, because boy, have I got a political party for you. But all jokes aside, I do think that, I mean, I kind of struggle with this because I don't understand why more Black people, why more people of color, why more women aren't libertarians, because traditionally speaking, they're the ones that get fucked with government by the most. don't understand why there aren't more. It's something that I've really been trying to give a lot of thought to lately and try to figure out like how exactly to square that circle. But as far as the GOP being racist, I'm trying to find the right words for this. Trump is not patient zero. Trump is the end game. And this is something that the GOP has not addressed for at least a good decade. And that's this kind of like low-key racism that they have that does keep a lot of people of color away from the party. Because Trump says a lot of the quiet parts out loud. And for better or for worse, that's how he is. I think it's for better because at least it's starting to drag this shit out into the light and try to like discuss it. But this idea that all of a sudden like this just started with Trump, like, no, it didn't. It's been this way, people. Come on. And yeah, it's coming home to roost. Like this is why you have Trump. Like this is why people of color don't want to associate with the GOP, because there is this like what used to be low-key racism now kind of devolving into high-key racism. I mean, it's just I can't really argue with that. But again, I don't know. Like there's that, and then there's just, you can vote for people based on your own policy positions, but I can see where that would be a very hard pill to swallow if you are a person of color, knowing that that's there. Like I get it. And that's why you should be libertarians. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I'm just kidding, but no, really, they should be. Anyway, moving back to the piece, because this quote right here, oh my God. To be a racial conservative means you're okay with Jim Crow, he added. There's only one party that you can support and be progressive on race, and that's the Democratic Party. Get the fuck out of here with that bullshit. Seriously, did you really just call every black conservative, every person of color that's a conservative, somebody who is down with Jim Crow? Somebody who's down with oh my God. And that you can only vote for the Democratic Party. Like, you cannot vote for anybody else. Like, that's, wow. See, this is, I'm not a fan of the whole plantation mentality. Like, I don't like the Candace Owen get off the plantation thing. But it's really hard to argue against that mentality when you have people who are willing to say shit like that in public. That, like, you have to vote for Democrats, otherwise you support Jim Crow. Like, dude, seriously? Wow. Like, that one just, like, blew me away. I was like, I don't. And again, like I said, in my episode about white women voters, the way to try to reach out to somebody and the way to try to appeal to somebody who's not currently in your camp is not to insult them and to say that, oh, unless you vote for Democrats, you support Jim Crow, is pretty fucking insulting. Like, this is not the way to appeal to people. This is the way to get people to turn away from you and to ignore anything that you have to say, because you basically just reduce them to like this one-to-one correlation, and there's no possible reason why a black person could want to vote conservative. Like, they're like, race isn't the defining issue for everybody, obviously, nor should it be. I think people should place policy positions before race, but like I already said, I get it when you don't, because there is an immense amount of pressure to vote in certain people. I mean, I get it. It is what it is, but don't insult people that don't vote the way that you wanted them to vote. That's not how you appeal to people. That's not how you reach out to these people to try to get them in your fold. Like, no, now you just pushed every black conservative away, because you basically just reduced them to, oh, if you voted conservative, you support Jim Crow. Like this, they still suck at messaging. When are they going to stop sucking at messaging? Anyway, we're almost done. Back to the piece. He said the Republican Party will continue to struggle to win support among black voters, even those who hold social and economically conservative beliefs, so long as it is perceived as racist. I already addressed that, but yeah, I mean, that is a problem. Every election becomes almost a single-issue election for black voters. Are you for or against civil rights? Johnson said, adding that all of the other social and economic issues get muted by racial issues. And again, I know I've already discussed this episode, but it bears repeating that there are people who place policy issues above race or gender. Do not alienate those people. Do not insult those people. Try to reach out to those people and understand what it is that they're voting for. Like, I don't get this. Like, no, race should not be your single most defining issue when you walk into the voting booth. It absolutely should not. Nor should gender, for that matter. Policy should be. Like, can we get everybody on board with that? That policy should be the most important thing when you walk into the voting booth as to who you decide to vote for? That has way more of an impact on your life than whether somebody has the same melanin level as you or the same genitalia as you. But see, that right there, like, that's what I was talking about how that pressure as a black person to vote for the other black person and as a black woman to vote for the other black woman, I imagine it's unreal. Like, I imagine it's really, really tough. And even if you are conservative and you do vote conservative, I'm sure you don't go home and tell your family about that over Thanksgiving break, because they're probably going to give you a bunch of shit about it. And it's like, why do we have to be this way? Like, oh, no. But yeah, that is the end of that piece. So, yeah, white women, I guess we have company now. I guess the black men get to sit with us and we all get to commiserate over how apparently if you didn't vote Democrat, you did it wrong and you're a bad, awful, evil person. Yeah, just so stupid. So stupid and ridiculous. But one more point I want to make on this piece before I wrap up this episode, and this is actually not something that I came up with. This is something that Camille Foster came up with when we were discussing this piece on Twitter, and that's this idea that at least women in this current moment, I guess we can call it, have at least been given the courtesy of saying that we had agency when we voted. Like, we moved from this idea that white women vote based on whether their husbands, dads, brothers, sons, whatever dudes in their life tell them to vote for, to this place where women actively vote, but they vote to protect themselves through the patriarchy. Whereas if you're black and you vote conservative, you're just like some kind of idiot who got tricked into it somehow, which, hey, women, at least we got agency back. There's that. The black people don't even get that. Like, obviously, you can't even, like, obviously, if you were black and you voted conservative, you must have been tricked into it somehow. Versus, if you're a white woman and you voted for conservative, you're just an evil bitch. But at least you made up your own mind to be an evil bitch. Progress, I guess? Kinda? Not really, but it's something. Anyway, on that note, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. If you did make it this far, thank you. And as always, please remember to rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, and YouTube. Take care, and until next time.